It's this week's Entrepreneur in the Corner.
Mustafa Koita is the founder and CEO of Koita Foods. It's an organic milk and distribution company based here in Dubai. The company is about to launch Koita Organic Milk next month here in the Emirates. Mustafa's a member of the local chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organisation EO, and he's this week's Entrepreneur in the Corner. Evening, Mustafa. Thanks for coming on the programme.
No, thank you for having me.
Question one, what made you become an entrepreneur, and what does being an entrepreneur mean to you?
So just to give you a little background, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid. And even throughout my entire professional career, while I was working at Fortune 500 companies, I just knew I wanted to start my own company. But at the time, I never had the financial cushion or the experience, frankly, to make that jump until later on in my life. So there are kind of three areas that really made me want to be an entrepreneur. I think the first point was I just love the idea of being my own man, making all the decisions and having an opportunity to sort of turn my vision into a reality. And that just wasn't very possible to do in a big corporate environment. I think two, funnily enough, I just had some horrible bosses during my career, and I think that through those experiences at the time, I found them very stressful. But they're frankly some of the reasons that drove me to make the jump, and I'm really glad that I actually had to go through that, and it's why I'm sort of here today and as an entrepreneur. I think the third point was very personal, and that was that I always wanted to start something that I could hand over to my children, and I've got two daughters and a son, and I always felt the food business was sort of a great platform or an environment for my kids to grow up around. And whether they want to be actively involved in it or not is really up to them. But I wanted to create something so at least they'd have an option to be part of a family business. I think when you ask what does it mean, that's a really good question. I think entrepreneurship means having full control of your destiny. And with that said, the flip side of having the full control of your destiny also means having the full responsibility of whatever it takes to get there. So as a lot of entrepreneurs may know, when you start the company on a shoestring budget, your title is CEO and founder, and that's kind of glamorous. But the unglamorous side of it is you're also the operations department, marketing and sales, you're your own secretary. It's not a very easy thing to do, but when you're passionate about something and you love something, it's all secondary. It's just part of the job.
Mustafa, what's been your biggest success, and what are you most proud of?
One of our successes, or something that we're very, very proud of, is what you sort of mentioned in the introduction earlier. Basically, we started Koita as a food distribution company, but we've always had the vision to become a food product company. And what that means is that we've always wanted to produce the Koita branded product line. And from day one, we always knew that was going to be an organic food product. That's something that my family and I, practice and very passionately believe in. So this happened sort of in also three phases. What we did was, about 2.5 years ago, we started listening, right? So we met a number of parents, a number of mothers, a number of individuals all over the Middle East and the GCC to sort of understand their needs for organic food. And we asked them so many different questions that we did lots of research. And from our learnings, we quickly realized that there was a great opportunity for a better organic milk solution here in the region. And we learned a lot of things. We learned from a lot of mothers that, for example, they wanted milk without pesticides, without hormones, without antibiotics. Things like they preferred paper cartons over plastic. As you may know, there's a big vitamin deficiency in the region, so they wanted added vitamin A and D3. And, we just kept listening and listening and listening to all of these people. And it just, we got so excited because we saw such a great opportunity. So phase one is sort of the listening part. The second phase was then executing on what we learned. And so what we had to do is take all of this input and this data and say, okay, how do we design the product? We need to study all the government regulations to make sure that it adheres to Dubai municipality and SFDA in Saudi Arabia and whatnot and make it compliant. We had to travel around the world to sort of find what we call the happiest grass-fed cows, and then we had to produce it. And then more importantly, we had to do all the financial analysis and costing to make sure that it made good business sense. So that execution phase resulted in a lot of sleepless nights. We were working over the weekends all the time. It was very tough. But luckily enough, we had a great team at Koita to help make that all possible. And then the last part of that success, I think, was integrating social responsibility into our product. So one thing that a lot of people don't know about our company is that as part of the mandate and charter of Koita, we actually donate 5% of all our net profits to local charities to give back. So we work with and set up a partnership in Saudi Arabia with the Disabled Children's Association. Here in the UAE, we work with Adopt-A-Camp. So even finding the right, charity partner for the product was also a lengthy process because we wanted an organization that also, stood for the same values that we did. So I'm very proud to say that the milk is now ready. The first containers are on their way right now as we speak, and they should be arriving in April. And hopefully everyone will see them on the shelves of some of the key stores here in Dubai by middle to end of April. And that's something that we've really put our heart and soul into. And again, we're very excited that we were able to turn our vision finally into a reality next month during its launch.
Let me take another tack and ask you simply this. What's been your biggest failure or the biggest letdown you've come up against so far?
There's been a lot of failures. I mean, the good news is that I think the reason where I am today is because of a lot of those failures. And before I get into the one that I'm thinking about, I think no aspiring entrepreneur should be ashamed of failure. In fact, to be an entrepreneur is actually someone to embrace failure and to learn from it, to get up, shake it off, and hopefully learn from that lesson and make a better decision the next time you're in that same environment. But one thing that I learned is, about 8 or 9 years ago, I did start a company with a good friend of mine here in Dubai, and it was a typical Dubai sort of situation. I was out one night with a friend. We were socializing. We came up with that great idea, and we said, hey, let's do this together. I trust you, you trust me, and let's do this 50-50 and see if we can make it work, And we set up a company, and not only was it a very stressful situation that it resulted in, but I lost a lot of money. But again, the good news is I learned a lot from that experience. And the two things that I learned was, one, that you should never start a company 50-50 or have two CEOs or two leaders in a company. And I think one thing people don't realize is that startups or small companies, their biggest advantage over bigger companies is that they've got agility or speed to market. And if you have two leaders in a company and you haven't really defined the roles like we had not, then the decisions were taking long. He was flying somewhere, I was flying somewhere. It would take a long time to make small decisions and big decisions in the company. And I think that was, one thing that I learned. The second thing that I learned is that because someone is a good friend of yours doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the greatest business partner. And I think, it also put a lot of stress on our friendship because socializing with someone and then doing business with someone, again, are two totally different things. So my advice or lessons learned from that were, when I'm going to start a company now, I'm going to own it 100% or I'll own the majority of it. And two, I just try not to do business with friends anymore just because, we've had some shaky experiences in the past.
Would you say that experience is the biggest challenge you've faced, the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome?
I mean, that experience was definitely challenging, but one of the challenges that I've had recently in my current business was actually managing growth. So if we come back to Koita and what we're doing right now, when we set up the business the first year, we made a little bit of money. And then the second year, when we closed the financials, we had grown 14 times. And that amount of growth for a small company was staggering. And I think the challenge was that when you're a small company, you've got, you can count your customers on one hand, and then the next year you've got 10 or 15 people who want to do business with you. You want to say yes to all of them. You want to grow. That's kind of like your big main goal. What we learn, though, is that when you grow, you have to assess each customer, each country, each market, and understand, the profitability chain of those deals. And so we would sign on customers, but the margin and the terms would not be favorable. But we were just so excited to get a new customer. So what we did the next year is we learned from that challenging, sort of situation. And now I think we're growing the company a lot smarter. We're learning to say no to some customers, and we're learning to put more time and effort into those customers and accounts or countries where we're getting a better return. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges that we've had just recently.
Final question, Mustafa. What's the best piece of advice you've received, and what do you try to remember every day?
That's a great question. I think that, there's two parts to it. I think number one, you got to be honest. And you got to be honest with yourself when you're starting a company. You got to be honest with your customers and your partners. And that's very, very important. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in Dubai, when you're a small company, for example, are sometimes afraid of telling or being transparent about how small they are in front of big customers or big government agencies or whatnot. And what we found is that, interestingly enough, Dubai, and I think the leadership of Dubai, has really instilled a sense of entrepreneurship in the country. I mean, the city is very young, and a lot of the big business leaders embrace entrepreneurs. So I'll give you a real world example. We were negotiating payment terms with a very big customer about a year and a half ago, and they'd asked for net, X days, which was just very hard for us to digest at the time. And we were very open and honest with them and said, hey, guys, we're going to give you great innovative products. We're going to give you great support. We're going to put passion into everything that we do. But frankly, we just can't finance this, And they were very empathetic. And we said, look, for the first year or year and a half, can you give us a break on payment terms? And then when we build up the firepower, then you can change. And we were honest, and they were okay with that. And I think that was very good for us and very good for them. I think the second part, or second thing that we live every day is persistence. And again, when you're an entrepreneur, you get so much rejection thrown at you every day because you're a small company. It could come from your suppliers, it could come from customers. And one thing that I think we've learned is that when we hear the word no at our company, we just see that as part of the process of getting to yes. And one of those examples are, and again, if you're dishonest and persistent, it won't work. You got to be honest and persistent. So one example is we had a customer in Saudi that we've been trying to do business with, and we literally email, call, try to meet them, a combination of those, probably once a week for about 32 weeks straight with no response whatsoever. And finally, on the 33rd week, they responded. We got a meeting with the decision maker. And now they're one of our, biggest customers and one of our greatest customers. So if there are aspiring entrepreneurs out there, if you knock on that door once and they don't open it up, knock on it 5 or 6 more times, and eventually the door will open.
Mustafa Koita is the founder and CEO of Koita Foods. He's a member of the local chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organisation and was this week's Entrepreneur in the Corner. Mustafa, good to talk to you, and thank you.
Thank you.